So, we're back.
Yep.
Podcast number 2 of the Uninhibited Library. Your boy Lane Thomas here. Here to talk some shit. But first order of business that I'd like to get out of the way is, if you haven't heard the news, we lost a wonderful musician today. Rest in peace, Mac Miller. Apparent drug overdose. We don't know what he overdosed on. The news came out around like 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock today, I believe.
Very fresh news.
Yeah, very fresh news. So, just rest in peace to him. You will be missed. Your music will be played long after.
Man, isn't it? It's just so crazy with all these artists dying. I mean, overdose is one thing, but it just seems like you would think that they're so like happy and positive, and they're living their dreams, their life's going so well, and then they're all miserable. And I really wonder, what's the common denominator on what their reasoning is, you know?
Yeah, and also, like, could it be related to, like, how the public eye is viewing them, and they have to, like, keep up this persona, and if they want to, like, you know, be them true selves or, like, divulge themselves, is it a fear of, like, losing your fan base?
Yeah, the question...
Or is it, like, you might lose your record deal?
Yeah, the question of how long do you have to keep... Like, I love Riff Raff, but I wonder how far that goes. Like, is he chilling with his girlfriend or whoever, laying in bed after a good fuck, petting his dog and going, yeah, I know I'm saying skills and shit, yeah, bro, like
Yeah.
you know, just being this whole persona, like, or does he ever turn it off? I'm always fascinated by the idea of, like, what an artist really is outside. Like,
Yeah.
I love listening to podcasts with celebrities and things in them because you get, after an hour, you can't keep up
you
can't keep up a facade. It's impossible. And so it's fascinating to hear into these people's lives that, like, I mean, I don't get so starstruck or think they're, you know, whatever.
Right.
But it fascinates me that, like, the facade, the idea of having to have this identity. I mean, it's like multiple personality disorder.
Like multiple personalities, or like,
Yeah.
or your public identity. And right before the podcast, like, not going too much into identity because we want to save that for y'all. You know, just heads up. But it is like having that multiple personality, and like, how deep does that go?
Yeah.
Like, can people, like certain celebrities, especially like with the clout that, you know, somebody like Mac Miller has gotten, being, you know, a renowned artist.
Yeah.
And I remember finding Kids when I was a freshman in like 2010.
Kicking incredibly dope shit. For those that don't know what Kids is, he did not just find children when he was that age.
Yeah.
Was it? I found Kids when I was 14, dude. I loved them. It was so amazing. I listened to Kids for hours. You don't want to keep. You know, I just want to clarify.
Yeah, I probably should have done a little more specificity on that subject. But no, it's like somebody that has had this, like, do they constantly have to, like, live that? And, like, does that... I'm sure it does in a certain aspect or in, like, certain ways. But, like, how much do you think that affects their relationships? Like, with normal people?
Does Lil Pump have to be Lil Pump at Thanksgiving dinner with his grandma? You know? Does he have to scream and sket it when he's sitting around the table and they're cutting into turkey? Like,
what? Thank you for this turkey. Like, whispering too. Like,
hey, yo, mom, pass a lean. You know, like, how far does that shit go?
Yeah, it's true, and I think you might agree with me, and I find this super admirable, is like, comedians are some of the only ones who don't really have this facade.
Who don't seem to.
I would say Dave Chappelle is always Dave Chappelle.
Yeah.
Now, if you're not familiar, Anthony Jeselnik, that's not Anthony Jeselnik, like, off stage. Like,
yeah.
He doesn't love dead babies.
Well, yeah.
But I was watching a interview with him today, and he was like, this is an act, and, like, if people don't think it is, then why the fuck am I on a comedy stage? That's what he said, word for word.
And I totally believe that. I mean, you've got, like, Larry the Cable Guy. You ever seen an interview with him?
Yeah, absolutely.
He's not a redneck at all.
No, not at all.
Yeah, not at all.
But Anthony Jeselnik said something very, I thought it was very interesting. And he's like, that part of me that I have on stage, like, it is, like, deep in me. Like, it is an act and everything, but he was saying he will sometimes catch himself being an asshole to people. And he's like, whoa, not on the stage. Like, reel it in. And I think that goes. I think they're some of the more genuine ones because comedians, and like this goes for a lot of artists as well, but they're damaged individuals, and
Yeah.
they capitalize on that rather than, maybe going to a psychologist or like they definitely get fucked up. That's like a big thing for comedians. But I would like to think that they're some of the more genuine ones because they're so accepting of their flaws. And I think musicians or actors and most celebrities are kind of afraid to reveal that part of themselves.
Yeah, especially actors.
Especially.
Actors is the number one. I mean, I love how you'll see, like, can you believe the body transformation this guy went through for this role? He put on 20 pounds of muscle in 3 months. And I'm like, yeah, and injected every steroid imaginable. It was paying a guy thousands and thousands of dollars a month so that he could do that. I mean, it's just the way it is. And people don't know that, or I don't even care to know that.
You always see these, like, weird diets. It's like, this guy put on this much weight thanks to his, like, crazy diet. And I'm like, bullshit.
Yeah. I mean, I hate to break it to everybody, but The Rock does massive amounts of steroids. Hugh Jackman, massive amount of steroids. You just don't get that big that quickly without a little bit of supplemental help.
Yeah, who I'm blanking on the name right now. If anybody is listening, they'll probably want to like find me and stab me. Who's Captain America?
I don't
Chris
know.
Evans? No.
Chris
something. Is it a Chris?
It's Chris something.
Either way, he put on a ridiculous amount of muscle, like
in a day.
Like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, dude, no, they're all on steroids. Even the women sometimes. Like, yeah. I'm sorry. Especially all of your Avengers. I don't know if I can name one that's not, other than maybe the Hulk. Surprisingly.
Because that's all CGI.
Yeah.
Every bit of muscle that he has, he's green and huge. CGI. Sorry to break it to you.
But yeah, man, but like all of these things. So then it comes back around to them being miserable. Like we all think they're living their dreams and living this whole other thing, but I think that sometimes the facade just gets to you. The realization that, like, I love when people show these videos where, like, someone gets mad at the paparazzi and it's, like, quote-unquote out of character, or someone, freaks out in an interview or a post, and you're like, yeah, dude, sometimes your personality's just gonna snap, and you can't keep up the facade, and you're like, look, I'm being an asshole right now, fuck you. Like, I don't.
Especially because the paparazzi in, like...
Dude, that's the crazy thing.
I've never, like, dealt with the paparazzi, but I think that they are some of the most heartless and like, well, I don't know, because there's like obviously like good paparazzi out there and everything, but they never know what's going on in that artist's life at that time, and they just want to ask their questions. Yeah, which is like pretty selfish.
Yeah, like I just saw a video where and what kills me is I watch the video. You know what I mean? It pops up in the feed.
Yeah.
And there I am.
You get stuck in that wormhole.
Oh my god, TMZ. But I saw this one where who was the Batman from Batman versus Superman?
Christian Bale?
No, Batman versus Superman. The other.
Oh, Ben Affleck.
Yeah, I saw a video where Ben Affleck, his wife, famous lady, whoever, was coming outside of their house while he was getting in the car about to go to rehab, and she walks up to paparazzi and was like, "Guys, can you just not do this right now?" And next thing it's on TMZ, like, "Oh, wife calmly talks to paparazzi about about him before he goes to rehab," and it's like, yeah, dude, have a fucking day. Like Kanye did that interview where he's like, I got liposuction after his album and all this stuff because people were talking about his weight and everything else. I'm like, could you imagine? And so we were talking about this a minute ago, but this comes back to like Mac Miller being so miserable and things like that. Another problem I think that happens is now with the age of the internet, whenever you believe in a topic hardcore or are focused on one thing, like if you're focused on astrophysics, your YouTube recommended feed is going to be astrophysics, your Google search is probably going to lean towards astrophysics, everything you're recommended to and whatever your thing you're on is going to be about astrophysics. I think what happens to these artists is since you've looked yourself up or recommended yourself so many times over and over again that you find yourself in this little hole, and depending on how your searches go, if Mac Miller's looking up Mac Miller does drugs, he's going to get 1,000 million post recommendations, videos, everything about everybody talking about him doing drugs, and he's just going to be stuck in this horrible he's on the wrong path in the woods, you know?
Yeah, that's something that I really think is a big issue, especially with YouTube. Because the YouTube suggested videos are like right on topic
Yeah.
for whatever it is that you're watching.
Yeah.
And like I know in music, it will literally like analyze the harmonics of some songs. So if you search like a very vague like something that I like to search is lo-fi hip hop music.
Oh, yeah.
Like if you search that lo-fi hip hop, it's going to read the like harmonics, and it'll obviously read, tags and similar titled stuff. But I do know that it pays attention to exactly like what you're hearing, and it will find you relatable things with the same amount of views, maybe even the same person that uploaded it, and maybe even the same artist. But I know it will analyze that. And like piggybacking off of that, that's what I think is a big problem with YouTube and like conspiracy theorists is whoever uploads their video about their thoughts, they control the comments. Like if somebody comes at them in a comment with a legitimate like, no, this can't be right because this is how science works, and just a brief one real quick, they can like change that.
Yeah.
And they can delete it, they can hide it.
They can modify the
Eric
message.
Dubé, that's like somebody that I absolutely hate.
Flat Earth.
Yeah, the Flat Earth guy.
Who made millions off of it.
Mm-hmm. And anybody with any legitimate like comments, they're down in a day.
Yeah.
Like he erases that.
Yeah.
And then like you're what is the word? Unrestricted and unregulated with what you want to put up.
Well, and this can go.
I think that could be a big issue.
This can go to the news too. You don't realize how much people can modify the message. Like, oh my gosh, I need to show you the scariest Conan video I've ever seen in my entire life. It's literally, they're all joking about it and everything, and he's like, oh well, it looks like local news had a really like important message to get out today. And dude, it's like 4 minutes long, and it just goes to different local news.
Oh, I was just showing Kelsey that video today.
I've shown like adults that video and stuff, and like everybody has the same reaction. The first 30 seconds it goes on, you're like, huh, okay, that's really weird. The minute goes in, you're like, what? And then by the end of like the 2-minute mark, everybody's the same reaction of like, okay, this is actually terrifying.
Yeah. So if you're not familiar with what we're talking about,
1, 2, maybe 10 gifts.
Yeah, it's actually a pretty old video. So if you have seen it, we're just gonna reiterate it. But it's on Facebook on Mont Reality. That's MONTREALITY. And it's the title is This is what This is what mind control looks like. And it's many different local news.
Now these are local newses. This isn't just Fox News or CBS. This is I want to reiterate that. Your local news has the same message as countless other ones.
El Paso, Albuquerque, Phoenix. They have one in Portland. Like all of these local newses are just right.
Responsibility is to serve our Treasure Valley communities, the El Paso, Las Cruces communities, Eastern Iowa.
Dude, this isn't even the same one I'm talking about.
This isn't the same one you're talking about?
No. I'm talking about one where they're in Christmas, and they're like, if you want to buy 1, 2, maybe 10 gifts for yourself this holiday season, it's okay. You can admit it. If you want to buy 1, 2, maybe 10 gifts for yourself, it's okay. You can admit it if you want to buy 1, 2, maybe. And it just
that's capitalism.
And it's on Conan. It's not like on some conspiracy YouTube video or something. It's on Conan that they're showing this.
Yeah, that's
nuts.
I haven't seen that one.
Yeah, I'll have to show you it after this because it's.
But the one I was just referring to is they have, I think it gets up to 36 news anchors that are synced up perfectly, saying like the creepiest part of it is this is a great threat to our democracy.
Oh, really?
That's what it says. Yeah. When we upload this podcast, I will drop a link.
Yeah.
For this, if you guys are interested, because
we should definitely be doing that too.
It is what mind control looks like.
Yeah, and you realize like how far. What else are they repeating? Who's typing it? That's my big question. Who's the one who typed that for all the local newses? Because it had to trickle down to the guy that types for the teleprompter, but it wasn't him. It was somebody somewhere. Like,
Yeah. Do you think that they literally because I don't know when all of these were released, and they might not have even been on the same day. But do you think it's like one person that just sends it out and says, hey, talk about whatever you want to talk about, but you have to throw this in? And then they're just like, okay, we'll find a place to throw it in at.
Yeah, and that's a fantastic question because I don't know. But because it's the local news, it will be like so and so got shot on Jimmy Avenue, and then the next thing will be this rhetoric put in somewhere on the teleprompter. And
right.
And I would love to not believe in the whole cabal Illuminati conspiracy, but it's terrifying that they have the ability to do that. Local fucking news is.
I've heard one thing from one or two sources, and I would like to think they're very credible, but nowadays you really don't know unless you spend hours fact checking. But it was Sam Tripoli, tinfoil hat, and he was saying, what was it? Damn, I just lost my train of thought.
If you started, I'll know it. I've seen all this podcast.
Yeah, it was Sam Tripoli, and I can't remember.
Thought block.
No, just lost it. It had something to do with the news and like a certain amount of things that had to be said during like every podcast, and it even got broken down into like threat to democracy or like
like buzzwords.
Yes,
kind of
like buzzwords that certain news stations have to use, and it like is so subconsciously influential.
Yeah.
Then like you really don't think about it until you see them all lined up, and you're like, whoa, who's pulling the strings?
Well, it's the idea of like when they made. It's like when they were talking about the war on terror, and they made this fake war on something that's just a term. Like there's no one to fight. It's just terror. Terror. Yeah. You have terror when you're watching a horror movie. You have terror when someone breaks up with you. You have terror. But once you make a war on an literal idea, like that was the thing, and they made it a buzzword in all of news and media and everything else.
So this is what I was looking to find. I just had to look it up. It is that for a very long time, and like all of these buzzwords are leading to something, and I don't know what. I'm not going to be, apocalyptic, and it could be a war, it could be a disease that breaks out, like it could be a manufactured disease, like it could be absolutely anything. But I've heard from a few sources, and I'd like to think they were credible, that whoever's pulling the strings, the aristocracy that runs, maybe not America, maybe runs everything, that they've been siphoning money for a very long time, to where when shit hits the fan, whether it's Antarctica or whether it's like that movie Elysium, when they're just in low Earth orbit, that they've just been ready and like stacking money and just waiting, and like when shit hits the fan, they're just gonna be off somewhere.
Yeah.
And like they Sam Tripoli related it very funnily, that's not a word. Related it very funny to the Terminator movie. Like, do you think if the Terminator happened, there's actually somebody that's running Skynet at like the highest level? Like, you never know, man.
Yeah,
and,
dude.
And we will never know, because it's been so that type of, and call it the Illuminati, call it whatever you want, but there's
rich people planning to do something like that.
Absolutely.
And what they're going to do is they're going to go down to Antarctica, where all of the Nazis left, and they're going to get down into the hole so that they can live inside of the hollow earth as everything bad happens on the outside. That is a total fact, obviously. We all know it. They're going to go to
hollow earth.
They're going to go to the edge. They're going to go to Antarctica, then they're going to go over the ice wall into the green areas and go down into the earth, because the earth is flat. I mean, don't you know this?
Oh, yeah, dude. I should have known that. The Earth is moving up, and that's what gravity is.
Yeah. We are actually on the inside. There are many continents and beauty outside of what we believe to be the globe. We're just not allowed to go anywhere near them because that's where all of the. I don't believe that overpopulation is a problem because there are more continents that we're not told about. It's very obvious.
I don't know. I call bullshit.
You call
I
really?
call all the bullshit.
You don't think that there's Nazis in a hollow Earth cave in
No,
Antarctica?
What I do know for a fact, because people probably think that you're serious at this point, which he's not, folks. One thing that I do know and I find absolutely interesting is, dude, there are complete in I want to say it's Colombia. I could be wrong, but there are complete villages or very small towns in South America. Oh, it's Argentina. It's not
I know
Colombia,
where you're going with this. Yeah.
where it's completely German speaking.
Yeah.
Everyone, brown
So-
hair, blue eyes, and not like 50 Nazis, like hundreds of thousands, high-ranking Nazis made it to Argentina, and like everybody there speaks German. They have like Wiener Schnitzels, like not literally Wiener Schnitzel, but you get the joke.
Yeah.
They have all of this stuff in the middle of Argentina.
Do you know the thing surrounding Hitler's death?
I
They found an
know a bit.
they
but
found
tell me more.
they found an escape tunnel where he died. Many years later,
Yeah.
they found an escape tunnel for where he was. Hitler's. Do you know about Hitler's
His
body?
body is the body of a woman.
Woman. Yeah. The body that they found and did whatever to was the body of a woman, and they didn't tell anybody forever, dude. Hitler did not die in that bunker. I actually do believe that. No,
No,
all
he
jokes
didn't.
aside, like Hitler didn't die in that bunker. He moved to
could
somewhere.
be probably dead now.
I heard.
Or, maybe they found some shit that helps him live longer, or they kept him like so healthy that he's probably just about
Dude,
dead now.
I found the funniest. They said this in a podcast. I can't remember who it was, but they said, "How hard would it be for Hitler to hide?" I mean, what he did was he made himself an iconic image where he had that stupid mustache and specific haircut, and all he'd have to do is shave that off, and you would never know it's Hitler. Do any of you know what Hitler looks like without the mustache? No. That's why he did it. He kept that mustache so that he'd be
Dude.
unidentifiable afterwards.
Dude,
Right?
that
Dude,
actually
that fucked
that
me
holds some
up.
weight.
Dude, that fucked me up. Because I'm like, look, dude, Hitler could be sitting across from me at Starbucks, and if he didn't have a mustache, I'd have no fucking clue who it was. No idea.
Dude, one thing that I recently learned. Yeah, I would never be able to recognize
Yeah,
him
what
without
the
a
fuck?
mustache. Especially if it like grew his hair out or something.
Yeah,
like,
it's over.
no. But one thing I found that is just astonishing is Nikola Tesla. You know who got all of his papers? I think we talked about this
He
briefly.
did.
Trump's great-grandfather was the one who
He was a scientist.
specifically, who was a scientist, went and got all of Nikola Tesla's lab papers.
And we've never seen them. They're not released anywhere. You can't find them online. There's no documentary talking about them.
And I firmly believe he probably gave the government 10% of it.
Yeah.
Like,
Something.
how much do you think? And
And how much do we not know that
Yeah.
he made?
Yep.
I mean, you know his whole battle with the
Edison.
worst human being on the face of the earth, Thomas Edison. Have you seen the one where Thomas Edison electrocuted an elephant?
oh yeah, just to
Dude,
prove
that's
that.
disgusting.
But he put him on a metal slab that was basically all copper with like an aluminum alloy on top, so it looked like steel.
This is on video, by the way, for all of you listening. Look up Thomas Edison electrocutes elephant.
Yep.
That's fact.
Yeah, he literally electrocuted the shit.
Because he's like, look how bad alternating current is. I mean, my direct current wouldn't electrocute an elephant, even though if you put a knife into a socket, you're going to get electrocuted. Like, it was insane.
AC
dude.
power and DC power, if you weren't familiar with alternating
Yeah,
current.
or if you want to
direct
look
current.
up what we're talking about. I
Yeah.
mean, it's just depressing. Disgusting.
It is. I mean, Joe Rogan had a very good point, and he was talking to Elon Musk on his podcast. If you
Yesterday.
haven't seen this, yesterday.
It might have even been today. I can't remember. Either
I
way.
think it was yesterday.
Either way, look up Elon Musk, Joe Rogan. Fantastic podcast.
Yeah.
You
It's
also see
great.
how awkward Elon Musk is and how funny, crazy he is.
Yeah.
It's great.
You did. They smoke weed together,
Yeah,
which is
they drink.
hilarious. But he was asking asking Musk, like, have you ever thought about your role in society? And I think this was like right after Elon Musk smoked, so he didn't really have many thoughts on this, or if he did, he couldn't articulate them well. But Joe Rogan said he's had a dream, and he's had it multiple times, and it like really stuck with him. The only dream that's like really stuck with him, and it was, what if there was 100,000 Teslas instead of one Tesla? And he's like, so I'll jump forward in my dream a little bit, and it'll be like the 1940s, 1950s, and they're just like Zeppelins flying around with like LED screens and everything like that.
Touch your laptop so it doesn't sleep.
Oh, you're good.
Okay.
And everything like that.
Is that electric sheep? No, never mind. Sorry.
And he was saying, like, Elon Musk, you fall into that category now. Like, what if there were 100,000 of you, but there's only one? And he didn't really have a response to that. But could you imagine if, because, like, we're so indoctrined, like, especially now, I don't know when this happened, but, like, being smart is dumb, or being smart is lame now. Being dumb is cool.
It was like that before. I feel like we kind of made it come back around, and then now we're pushing that narrative back. Oh.
I don't know if we can hear it.
I do believe that there is something going on in hip hop that they're pushing a dumb agenda.
Oh,
I don't think
absolutely.
that Lil Pump is a genius, or Takashi 6ix9ine. I don't think that they're like secretly in on it and geniuses or whatever. I think they're just part of the wave. But you can't deny how much they. I mean, why does Future, who claims that he doesn't do drugs, have a song that literally goes Percocet, Molly Percocet,
yeah.
Percocet, and like what? I mean, that's an agenda if I've ever heard one ever.
Yeah, that's so true.
And then we have all these spikes in prescription drug deaths and everything else, and our generation death. Look, when I hear about my parents doing drugs or any adults doing drugs, and you hear about the minuscule amounts and little things they were doing, and then you look at, I would say 65% of the people that I've ever met around my age who have done like incredible amounts of drugs. I mean, and I'm in that boat, but these people have done like my mom would be like, oh, no, not my mom. Like, who's a good example? Like this old farmer that I used to work for, he would talk about like getting high and how, oh, they would do like, they would split an 8-ball of cocaine between like 10 of them and have this crazy night. And then everybody I know is like, oh, you mean like Tuesday when I did an 8-ball? You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
it's this crazy agenda and this push for all this stuff to be worse. And I'm not saying drugs are bad at all. I'm just saying it's fascinating to me that like these agendas are being pushed.
Drugs are bad for certain people.
Yeah.
I mean, alcohol is a drug that just kind of got grandfathered in.
Oh, no. It's drugs and alcohol.
Yeah.
Sir, God, nothing makes me more mad. It's so ridiculous.
Drugs and alcohol.
Drugs and alcohol, even though alcohol is literally the worst drug you could do.
Yeah.
Physically for you.
Oh.
Quickest withdrawals, hardest withdrawals. One of the few drugs you can actually die from withdrawal
Makes you
on.
so dependent.
So dependent. Everybody does it. It's freely pushed.
I guess like opiates, benzodiazepams, and alcohol are probably the three worst.
Yep.
As far as withdrawals,
100%.
dependency.
And I mean, clean, good heroin is better for you than Roxy's. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
because
100%.
There's, what is it in Roxy? This goes for all prescription drugs, really.
Yeah, Roxy's a pain.
You have like
whatever.
10/200. And that means that you're getting 10 milligrams of your desired drug and then just 200 milligrams of filler.
Yeah.
Ibuprofen,
Questions.
Salt, like whatever it may be, but it's nonsense.
It's like tobacco's not that bad for you until you smoke a Marlboro and it's filled with all this extra shit and it just makes it so much worse for you and so more addictive and so much more dependent. And none of us really know what's in it. As much as you like to be like, oh, it's carcinogens and toxins and, everybody uses buzzwords, but I'm like, okay, what's actually in it?
And then I think what's even more important, which honestly I feel like most people don't like to think about, is when those are heated, they react completely different. Chemicals at room temperature react completely different than chemicals that are hot. the most basic example I can give is ice and water.
Yeah.
It changes its chemical structure completely.
That's a very good point.
Like, so what happens when, like, you obviously, you can't inhale like certain carcinogens unless they're heated, but like they're put in unheated, and like when you burn them, shit changes.
I mean, there's an agent in cigarettes that prevents it from catching. Like, you don't flick out in the grass and it doesn't set your whole grass on fire because there's a chemical in it that you are lighting and putting into your lungs that's made to be basically fire retardant. Like,
Yeah, that's because
what?
I want to say in like the 60s, people were falling asleep with cigarettes,
Burning the house down.
burning, especially in like when buildings weren't as, nice as they were or as durable as they are now, and, not as safe as they are now. Smoke detectors, if they were around, I'm sure they worked like shit. So, like, how, I want to say it's like the 60s when people just started burning houses down, but it didn't stop with their house. It would just spread, and you'd lose. London was a big problem with this, and I want to say it was even before the 60s. Like half of London would burn down.
Yeah, and I mean, it's
people are
amazing.
smoking.
And it's amazing how fire can do that, too.
Yeah, I
But-
mean, the fire in California right now.
Do you know how that started?
I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, a bunch of kids just lit a tree on fire, right?
No, I think there's I know one of the fires, when I read out in the news what started it, was like a car had like a flat tire and it sparked from its hubcap.
Really?
Something like that. I'd have to fact check that. But, yeah.
Um,
Which is
oh.
just another example. I'm sure there's another one where kids set a fire.
So, Los Angeles Times, 10 hours ago, Interstate 5 still closed, businesses slumping as the Delta fire continues to burn Shasta County north of Redding. A roughly 45-mile section of the interstate is closed. I'm trying to find out how much has burned. Okay. The blaze has consumed 24,558 acres by Friday morning and is still actively burning along the side of the interstate. 17 semis were abandoned by trucks because their drivers couldn't maneuver the trucks out in time, and at least 4 of the trucks were completely burned. I want to find out how much the fire is still at 0% containment. 25,000 acres, 0% containment. And that's absurd. The Hers fire, which is... Oh, this is going too. So that was the Delta fire. This is the Hers fire, which has scorched 46,150 acres and is 80% contained. That's a total of just about 70,000 acres and 80% containment.
Yeah. And then, so then going back to what we were talking about, you're smoking a fucking chemical that prevents forest fires. I mean, it's crazy. That's one thing that people need to know about drugs is that when you're actually doing the pure stuff, like pure cocaine, pure heroin, good alcohol, all the other things, like, they're not that bad for you.
In moderation.
Well,
Yes.
Everything can be bad for you, but so can water.
Yeah.
You know, you gotta, but they're just not as bad. Like, it's hard to overdose on regular heroin or pure heroin. It's hard to overdose on pure coke. It's easy to overdose on fake everything. Everything's been cut with. I mean, all the fentanyl deaths that have happened. I mean,
yeah. Well, I mean, I was talking to somebody, who's a doctor, and they have very good credentials in this field, and they work a lot in pharmacology as well. And it's funny because, like, the person that made fentanyl, like, you and I would be like, we've lost so many good people, like, I've lost friends to it, like, in our minds we would think, like, why on earth would you make this? Like, who needs something 100 times stronger than morphine? But, like, to these individuals, to them, they're actually doing a huge justice to society because it was amazingly cheaper so people could get it.
Mhm.
You would have to do less. And, like, that's when you get assholes that abuse it and like you would think like who's making this stuff? They're monsters. Actually, it was what's his name? Hamilton from Hamilton's
Yeah.
Pharmacopoeia. Do you know his name?
Pharmacopoeia, yeah.
Ham-
Hamilton Morris.
Hamilton Morris. Okay, thank you. Yeah, it was Hamilton Morris, and he was saying like the guy that made fentanyl, he didn't want to make it to kill all these artists and like get people high. He made it because it was cheap, easy to make, and it could help people. You know,
Yeah.
help people in cancer,
Mm-hmm.
help people with, terrible, terrible pain issues that like are unfathomable to you and I at this moment. So like you'd like to think that everybody's a monster making this stuff, but everybody's doing it for the right reasons, and it's just our society abusing it. And that goes back to what you were saying about how an 8-ball would last 10 people, 2 nights back in the day, but now it lasts one person a night.
Yeah.
And that's just society like chasing as a whole, chasing the dragon.
And I wonder what's making us chase the dragon. That
Is it unhappiness?
well, that Jessa Reed girl, Math P1, and I was listening to her podcast, and she was talking about like, so remember how we talked about, I think we talked about in the last podcast where we said that in 2001 we were set back spiritually.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
during 9/11.
Yeah, what she said is what happened is we are the generation of like millennials and whatever. We were already prepped to come into a world that was supposed to be quote unquote more enlightened or better off.
Right.
And since we are in that form and this is her theory, by the way. I'm just spouting ideas here. But she said that because we were supposed to come into this world that's like that, but we're like not, but it didn't end up becoming better off. We're kind of fidgeting and having panic attacks and nervousness because this just isn't the world that we were programmed for.
Right.
It's messed up. And it's causing all these problems. I mean, look, like have you ever heard of an adult talk about panic attacks? Or friends of theirs in high school or anything like that?
I've
No.
never.
No, not at all. And yet at work I could probably find 10 people who have panic attacks.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, or more. And anywhere you go, anywhere you talk to people. I mean, if you sit in a crowd with 5 people.
And that's not to say that they're not real, but I think I personally don't think I've ever had a panic attack.
I've had one.
And, if you have them all the time, that's unfortunate. I hope that it can be worked out or solved. But I think just us creating that term, it's like when you go on WebMD and you find out you have every single type of cancer that you've ever had because your stomach hurts.
Yeah.
Like, I think making these has made people just be like, yeah, that's what it is, and then they placebo themselves.
Well, I believe in the thing with placebo. The only panic attack I had, I don't know if or can remember what set it off, but it is a fascinating experience because what happens is basically you start genuinely panicking for no reason.
No reason.
You can even be conscious that you're having it and you're like, okay, why am I panicking? But your whole body, separate from your linear conscious mind or identity, is just, your body's going into panic mode and your mind's going, why the fuck are we panicking? And you're like losing it. Like, it's weird. Your heart's racing out of your chest. Like, you're just so fucked up. And
Do you think that has to do? I have an idea. Sorry, I didn't mean to.
No,
cut
you're
you
fine.
off.
That's basically what I was going to say.
I have an idea that. Do you think us using, and this goes on for, years and years, and now we've reached this point. Do you think we've kind of gotten out of touch? I mean, I know we've gotten out of touch, but do you think we've kind of gotten out of touch with our own minds due to all these drugs and due to our parents doing all these drugs, like pharmaceutical drugs specifically? Like, to where, back in the day, what if panic attacks were just as real as they are now, but people just had to take a deep breath because they didn't
have Xanax.
get their Valium or their Xanax,
Yeah.
and like now we just can't even regulate our own thoughts.
Well, and I also think it's the problem with we're so bombarded with connectivity with other things and places that everybody's pretty much out of touch with what their life really looks like. I mean, a small example. Back in the day, you would have like hot girls in magazines every once in a while, but you lived in your town, and nowadays you'd be like, oh, that girl's a 6, but that would be the hottest girl you've ever seen in your life in your little small town, and you wouldn't have I couldn't get on Google and type in hot girl and get 150 million girls showing their ass to me. I was just in my small town falling in love with Sarah the Six.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And now that's like not to shit on it, because that is, that is the path of progress, and maybe it's the price of progress as well. But I think that there's something that is making us as a society weaker mentally.
Yeah.
Or not mentally as far as intelligence, but mentally as far as regulating our own bodies.
I think it's the ability to build a bubble that doesn't exist in your real life. Like the whole incel thing that's going on. You know what that is?
I've
Where
heard
the guys are just
but
hate
you
women
should-
because they won't fuck them or whatever, and they go on this
Yeah.
whole like power trip. The problem is I can't remember. There's a good term for it, but it's like, or there's a good saying for it, but it's like now we're worried about things that have nothing to do with our life whatsoever at any point in time. When my real day is waking up, going to school, taking classes specific that I took, going to work, and then going home or hanging out with friends or going to the bar. But then you hang out with friends and go to the bar, and suddenly everybody's talking about how much of a problem feminism is, or how much of a problem remember when there were Nazis everywhere all of a sudden, and there were so many Nazis involved, and all these white supremacists came out of the woodwork? You know how many?
Yeah,
You know how many?
absolutely.
You know how many of them I met?
How many?
None. I never even ran into one.
Yep.
I was just at the grocery store. But God forbid, that was like on everybody's minds that day, even though no one in the grocery store had seen a Nazi anywhere.
That could go right back to the media that we were talking about.
Yeah, exactly. It circles all the way back around. Like it's this problem of
pushing these ideas.
Well, it's the problem of like I was saying about the bubble with the artists and everything. It's like if you, I don't know. Actually, did we talk about that on here?
A little bit, but that could basically, I think what we did talk about was YouTube and how you can regulate and create your own bubble of people that are allowed to agree with you.
Yeah. And then once you do that, you've built up this whole magical, literally mental world that's not, I mean, it may be real somewhere, but it's not real to you. It's not real in your life.
Yeah, when do you experience the not?
My grandma said that during like she's like, there's all these wars going on, these things going up through her whole life, and she's like, but the common man never really had to be bothered by any of it. Right. She was like, you'd see it on the news and do whatever, but it's not like it really technically affected them on a day-to-day basis. And if you're in that field or whatever field we're talking about, that's fine, but that's in your real world. But
that's not everybody's.
Look, everybody at the bar who wants to sit around and talk about all this like political shit when they've never even, they don't vote.
Played a role in politics.
They don't vote, and they've never even been a part of it, and Trump has technically really never, and people are going to get mad at me for saying this, but Trump has technically never really affected your life that you would know of it. And it's like, people just, why are you drumming up so much nonsense that's just bothering you in your life if it doesn't exist? It just doesn't exist.
Yeah, that you will probably never have to.
Never be affected by, never really see. Yeah.
Right.
I mean.
One thing that I have looked up right here, because this is a huge topic of like debate. This is coming from straight off of Google. So this is the order of the generational names, because nobody seems to have a true, like, people think millennials are this or that. So I just want to clarify that right now. So you have the silent generation, born 1928 to 1945. That's 73 to 90 years old. You have the baby boomers, 1946 to 1964.
Oh, 73 to 90, so like our age group.
Yeah.
Don't forget that.
So we are a silent generation. And look fucking good for it.
It's all the Botox and that boob job and everything, you know.
Oh, dude, my boob job looks so good.
I know. Mine are squishy, too. I can't believe I still have feelings.
So real. The baby boomers, 1946 to 1964. That's 54 to 72 years old. Then you have Generation X, which is 1965 to 1980, 38 to 53. Millennials are born 1981 to 1996.
That's my grandma's generation.
Yeah. That is my great aunt's generation.
Oh yeah.
And then you have post millennials or Gen Xers, and that is 1997 to the present. Just wanted to throw that information out because there's always some debate of like, I'm not a millennial. Like, what if you are? What's the problem with that? Like, you should at least know for sure. That debate comes up at our work all the time. Like, I'm not a effing millennial. It's like, look when you were born. Yeah. And just because you're a millennial, that does not describe your character.
You know, I love this. Alan Watts had this thing that he pointed out, which I say all the time, is isn't it interesting that witches have magical powers and they cast spells to get people, when spell is the same thing as like spelling or a word, and then witches will have like a phrase or an incantation they say, like da 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 Leviosa.
Yeah.
When in reality, like, it's just like they spelled a word and made it magic, and then there's like curse words. Like, ooh, yeah, you see what I'm saying? Funny. Yeah, so witches cast spells like "fuck you," which then makes you feel bad about that because it's a spell that affects on your emotion or emotion.
Yeah.
So they cast this energy at you that brings your energy down, and that kind of idea.
Dude, I saw something very interesting. I'm not really sure where you're trying to take that one.
No, I was just.
I saw something very interesting though, and it's our language. Especially as it evolves. I was just going to light another incident as well.
I don't know how to put it
especially as our language evolves and we kind of take it new facets, and we like to think that we're getting smarter and can articulate our ideas a little better.
Sounds like we can't, but
apparently we can't. But it was saying that like our language significantly adjusts our thought processes. And one great example is in, Spanish-speaking cultures, you don't say you broke the vase. You would say the vase broke, because you broke the vase wouldn't make any sense. But it'd be like tu rompas, and then whatever vase is. But like you'd never hear any say that. You'd just say to rompar vase. And that means the vase broke. But in America, it's completely fine to say, like, you broke the vase, whether it was an accident or not. And I think that really specifically with American civilization, like, that makes so much sense because, like, we are a lot more aggressive.
Yeah.
And we are a lot more confrontational than a lot of other societies.
And very individual.
Yeah, very individualistic.
Yeah.
Like, and obviously that has to do with like a lot of how America runs and everything and blah 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 blah. But before we even had our main, like, these main ideas and these main things that we like to attribute to problems in society, like, they very much so could have even started with language, because like our language has so much to do with how we think. And I thought that was very interesting. I just looked this up. I'm gonna, like, while you say your thoughts on that, I'm gonna find the TED Talk right now.
Well, they say like I believe it's either Japanese or Chinese language. Or okay, one of the things they say about like Japanese people is that they're not so focused on the individual, whereas they're more of like a unit as a whole, which changes the entire way you interact with society, and that all comes from their language and their terms where they are. If you ask, and if you talk to like or an American person or English speaking person, they'll ask a question like, how was I made, or things like that. Whereas if you talk to like a Japanese child, he'll be like, how did I grow? Which is like
right.
a totally different, it sounds simple, but it's like a totally different mindset on the idea of how the idea of how you perceive things. Mm-hmm. You know, growing versus being invented or being created there's two totally separate things. And
That's
it's just
very true.
yeah, and it's just fascinating to see like have the idea of like how simple how something so simple in language can be so powerful and overwhelming for your entire life. Like,
Right. And I
wish
think
I had
that's why
better
like
approach
learning
that.
no, that's very true. And I think that's why like people who are multilingual have a very, very good aspect on the world.
Yeah.
Like, and that not only can it help them try to understand how certain societies think and like help them fit into those societies if they ever visit, but also like I think it helps them appreciate the best parts of societies and also the worst. Like
Yeah.
they don't appreciate the worst, but also maybe stay away
Well,
from them.
well, thinking in English, there are things that you can say in English and in any other language that you can't articulate the same way in another language. And when you
Right.
think about just that simple thing, like with translation and thing, the other part is there are like if you can't think the same, or if you can't speak the same way or translate things perfectly, then when you're thinking in a different language, you're thinking in a totally different way.
Yeah,
You're
your
perceiving in a
systematic
totally different way.
thought process is completely different. Yeah.
And that can modify the entire way you just look at a fucking chair. Like, what is it in Japanese? They don't say it's a chair as a solid object. They almost say like chairing.
Yeah.
Like this object is chairing, or the idea of like the word object is doing something as opposed to it just being stationary, which comes back to the growing thing.
Right. Right. That's very interesting. Actually, I need to
Yeah.
possibly look.
Yeah,
that
we
up.
need to research that a little bit more.
But the
Stop.
podcast or the TED Talk that I was talking about is
Oh, I've seen that.
Lara Broditsky. No, it's LERA BORODITSKY. So Boroditsky.
Yeah.
So Lara Boroditsky at TED Women
I wonder if
2017.
you can hear this chair.
You can.
Oh, that sucks.
And the title
I'll bring a
is
chair.
How Language Shapes the Way We Think. So if you want to look that up, it's very interesting. Also, if you know about audio, this makes sense. I'll just throw a gate on.
Oh yeah,
So
yeah.
unless
You-
we're
you explain
talking.
it to me. I can actually when I bring the trays, I can bring it. I have a bunch of chairs that sit together. I can bring a
Yeah,
chair.
definitely bring those because we want to have some guests on.
Yeah.
Definitely bring those. But yeah, that'll be nothing. That'll be out.
That's outside of the podcast talk.
But no, that's very interesting. Is how language shapes the way we think, and this is kind of super out there. And there's not really anywhere that we could take this, but dolphins, man. Dolphins and
Dolphins.
whales have like crazy dialects and everything. And what if that shapes the way they think too? Like, what if this is a super hypothetical what if? But what if dolphins are like so much more in tune because they have a more complex language than us?
Yeah, that's very, I guess, for lack of a better term, specified to their environment and their experience. I mean, it's like the idea of, are dolphins swimming or are they flying? You know, what
Hmm.
are they in? You know, are they just in the air to them, or do they realize they're in water? I mean, obviously they jump out, but even jumping out,
That could be like
you're
laying
still
down
flying
for
to
us.
flying. Yeah, like it could be a whole different fucking thing. Like,
Yeah, that's very true. That's a interesting thought for sure. One thing that I thought was very interesting, segueing into parallel dimensions real quick. I guess however you can quickly segue to something like that is I heard the example of Neil deGrasse Tyson. I can't remember what I heard this on, but it's the best example of parallel dimensions I've ever heard. And so say you go out, like we're in Earth and we go get a canoe and we go on the water, right? If you're just sitting in the canoe and you don't put your hands in the water, like that's your dimension. But there's a whole nother world below you that,
or above.
or above you, that you haven't even, like you can't imagine what reeds are below you when you're in the canoe. You can't imagine any of that type of stuff. But it is there nonetheless. So that's what I think the fourth dimension and the fifth dimension and the sixth, and it goes all the way up to 12. We can only have 12 is what we think.
You want to hear a really crazy thought experiment I came up with one day?
What's that?
So the idea of like the third dimension, and this is not going to put dimensions in a perfect way, but it's just a crazy
Yeah.
example. Okay, so you have the third dimension, which is like 3D reality, but we're going along on a timeline, like linear. Now imagine if the fourth dimension was time. So you're walking down through a cave, right? And it's got torches lighting the way. and you're walking through, say, this tunnel, right? You keep walking, and in the third dimension, we're all linear going through time, so you keep experiencing like more ways down the tunnel, more ways down the tunnel. Now the fourth dimension, which would be time, well, since you'd be outside of the linear thing, imagine the tunnel like right here, like pull yourself outside of the tunnel and see the entire tunnel at once, and that would be outside of time. You would see all of you walking through the tunnel. Whereas, so if you take that with life, imagine you're going through your whole life, all 100 years or whatever, but imagine you could step outside of that and see an entire long, basically, for lack of a better way to explain it separately, a 3D model of your entire life as a 3D object.
Not like is one moment.
Yeah,
like
you would see all the moments in this big long tunnel and see like all the images of yourself growing all and doing the whole thing like a TV reel or a movie reel when you pull the reel out and you see.
Talk about the
life.
Matrix.
Yeah, dude. Like pull yourself outside of all of that and you can see your whole life at once. Like people talk about with trips and stuff like that. And it's like, what?
Dude, one thing I find, I don't know if I necessarily believe it, and this kind of is related to that. Like, I'm open to somebody changing my mind if we have somebody come on that is super intellectual about this topic. But
and please do. If anybody hears these, whenever we have a website or whatever blog or whatever we have set up, please feel free to correct or throw your ideas out. We are open to modified ideas. I want to hear responses. Don't just be like, you fucking morons, you guys are awful, you did this wrong. No, change my mind.
Educate us. Yeah. And we want hopefully by like podcast 5. So we settled on a name today.
Yes, we did.
Yes, the Uninhibited Library, because nothing is off topic.
No.
Nothing. We're free to talk about anything, and so we're gonna get this set up to when we can do live streams as well. But we want to have a chat.
Yeah.
We want to have a live chat where
we want to have a library, because the library has many books on singular topics. You know, if you want to learn about politics, there's 150,000 books on politics, and some have different perspectives than others. So we want to be in touch, or at least build a community that's in touch with each other, so you all can talk to each other and bring up ideas and change people's minds and inform more people about things.
Because that's all.
Because we're not right.
Is.
We're not right. I mean, maybe we're right, but we're not right. Like we're open
not
to be wrong.
Experts in any of this.
Yeah.
But that's like, in the end, I'd like to think that that's why we're doing this, is to kind of open people's minds to new ideas or topics that they haven't really thought of.
And our own.
And our own, yes. But also just to connect with people and expand our knowledge.
We also are going to try to have a live chat, although, especially in the early stages, that will be fun because people can actually talk and we'll see it. But, depending on... But basically, like, we just want everybody to be able to communicate. And we want to, like, build the information up. And just don't be a jerk. Please don't. It doesn't help for you to say someone's an idiot for only understanding something
because we know we're not an expert on any of this. Never claim to be. And if you want to come on, message us. Like, more guests, the better. Yeah. We're in Nashville, Tennessee.
Yeah.
If you're in Nashville and want to talk,
we're in a room, like just a basic bedroom right now. But whenever we have guests on and things, we have access to really nice studios that we can get in and bring guests on, and we would love to talk to anybody.
Absolutely.
Anybody.
Because that's all we want to do.
Yeah, and if you want to be anonymous, you can. If you want us to shout out some stuff for you, we can. We can do any of that. What time are we at?
Oh, I don't know. Let's see. We are at 59 minutes.
59 minutes.
Right on. Well, I would say that we're probably going to call it good for today.
Yeah, that's good.
Good hour-long podcast.
Yep.
A lot of things talked about.
Yep, and our podcast will vary in time all the time.
We're going to always try to get an hour.
Yeah, minimum.
And then maybe 3 some days.
5.
Maybe
2,
5 some days.
Whatever, we don't know.
But always try to get an hour, just of us bullshitting. And if you want to listen, listen. If not, listen. But Yeah, that's all we're trying to do is just talk about stuff, just kind of expand our minds a little bit, and then in the end game is learn from you guys. Learn from y'all because we're not experts on any of this. We just have our own opinions
Yes.
on it.
Yeah, and we like talking into microphones.
And we like talking in the microphone.
And so over the next few podcasts, we're gonna build up our social media and everything else. So there will be a way to get back and forth with us or to talk, and we will look at it. We'll talk to you.
We will
message you.
definitely
Yeah, we will
be
definitely
interactive with our audience.
Yeah, we'll get a Reddit set up. We'll do the whole 9 yards.
Yeah, so we're gonna have probably by the end of next week we'll have a YouTube, we'll have a Twitch so we could stream, we'll have a Facebook, an Instagram, Twitter, any way that you guys want to get in touch with us, feel free, and we'd love to hear your opinions.
We will also be making a Discord.
Yes, I actually have a
really
Discord.
Great. Okay, good.
That's perfect.
And this will be the Uninhibited Library. That's our name.
The Uninhibited Library. Also, we came up with this idea tonight that so if you don't know Thomas and I, we like to have our fun.
Thomas and Lane.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's get your name out there.
Yeah. So if you know us, then you definitely know we like to have our fun. But we want to have, even if it's like a 20-minute or even 15-minute segment of our next upcoming podcast, we want to have Row.
We're either going to make this a separate podcast or part of our podcast.
Yeah. And we'll have like intro music and everything so you'll know when it's coming. But Row is ROOH. And it is called Remnants of Our Habits. And it's just going to be stories about certain habitual activities that have gotten us into sticky situations. or crazy situations.
Or experiences.
That's right. So be looking out for that. At the end of the day, we want to thank you guys for listening.
Yep.
And feel free to let us know what you think. If you know that we need to tune it up a bit or touch some things up, your opinion is definitely going to be heard.
We also want any tips you guys could give us on
what
absolutely.
We're doing. If we fuck up a total podcast, like, you better tell us.
Yeah.
That's on y'all.
If this one's boring,
we're just going to keep doing them.
Whatever you want. We're open.
Right on. Well, I guess this is the episode 2 of the Uninhibited Library. Clocking out.
All right. Thank you,
guys.
All right.
We'll see y'all later.